Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the 48th Annual Stroum Lectures at the University of Washington. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the University of Washington sits on the occupied homelands of the Coast Salish peoples. I am grateful to live and work as a guest on these lands. This land acknowledgement is but one small gesture in the ongoing process of working towards repairing and sustaining relation with Coast Salish lands, waters, people, and their other-than-human kin. My name is Mika Ahuvia, and I'm the Herbert and Lucy Pruzan Chair in Jewish Studies and Director of the Stroum Center for Jewish Studies. On behalf of all of us here at the Stroum Center, it is my pleasure to welcome you, and thank you all for coming. Many of you here with us tonight have also been instrumental partners in the successes of the Stroum Center, dating back to its origins almost 50 years ago. So thank you for your support and your ongoing commitment. And thank you to those of you who donated while registering for this event. We want to make thoughtful and educational programming free and accessible to all, and your donations help to make that a reality. I'd also like to thank the amazing dream team that makes all of our public events possible and makes the Stroum Lectures the pinnacle of our year's events. My deepest gratitude to Sarah Zadis Rosen, to Brendan Goldman, to Grace Elizabeth D., to Lauren Van Susen, to Kara Schoonmaker, and to Liv Fowler. Thank you. Okay, I would like to now introduce my colleague and the moderator of tonight's event, Professor Barbara Henry, who is an associate professor in the Department of Slavic Languages and Literatures. She is the author of Rewriting Russia, Jacob Gordon's Yiddish Drama, and co-editor with Joel Berkowitz of Inventing the Modern Yiddish Stage. Her monograph, Tales from the Russian Underworld, should be out in 2024 with Cornell University Press. Can't wait. After which she will finally get back to translating the highly entertaining memoirs of the Ukrainian Yiddish theater impresario and actor Evram Fishzun. Please welcome Barbara Henry.
Thank you, Mika. It is a privilege to welcome back Anthony Mordechai Tzvi Russell, and his accompanist, Dmitri Gaskin, who on Tuesday presented the first Stroum lecture, Signs and Wonders, a Melodiklamatsia. It was, if you saw it, an extraordinarily moving, funny, and trenchant examination, not only of the many components of Anthony's art and experience as a queer Jew of color, but of what he called imaginary poles between Black and Jewish culture in America in general, fusing the music and spirituality of the Deep South, the old country of African American history, trauma, and art, to the actual and semi-legendary past of Eastern European Jewish immigrants to the US. The performance was startlingly original in its combination of music, spoken word, song, and film. And for me, this formal diversity reflects the rich variety of the artist's inspirations and expertise, but it also illustrates a spiritual ideal of a wholeness that does not efface its heterogeneous constituent elements, but finds in them a larger pattern that expands to include us within its design as well. Anthony Russell is not only a classically trained performer, composer, and arranger specializing in music in the Yiddish language. He's also a scholar and a writer whose exploration of traditional Ashkenazi musical forms and African American folk music resulted in the EP Convergence in 2018 with the klezmer trio Veretsky Pass. His experiences as a Wallace Annenberg Helix Fellow as part of the Yiddishkeit organization in Los Angeles, on an ethnographic trip to Belarus and Poland resulted in his forming with Dmitri Gaskin Zwei Brüder, two brothers, with just come out with a new album, Cosmopolitan, on the Borscht Beat label. And it is available for download right now, and you just go to the website. They have a pay what you want, but you should pay like $25 at least. Download it, it's fantastic. It imagines a kind of Yiddish cabaret that might have been, and in their realization of that dream, it becomes real on this fantastic album, which sets the texts of modernist Yiddish poetry by writers like Celia Dropkin, and Avram Raisin to new original music. Cosmopolitan is lively and contemplative, traditional and modern, art song and shtetl tune, and entirely its own thing. Dmitri Gaskin is an accordionist, pianist, composer, and arranger specializing in klezmer and in Polish folk music. In addition to W.E.B, he performs with the Bay Area klezmer trio Bemele. In 2022, he served as music director for the San Francisco Playhouse's production of Indecent, which is Paula Vogel's adaptation and reimagining of Sholem Asch's Gott von Nakoma, or God of Vengeance. Dmitri is also a recipient of the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers Morton Gould Young Composer Award for his work in contemporary classical music. And he studied accordion with Josh Horowitz and Alan Byrne, and he lives in California with his wife and 3 adorable accordions. Tonight, Anthony and Dmitri will perform Between Me and the Other World, which is an immersive musical collaboration that explores Dr. W.E.B. DuBois's provocative question, how does it feel to be a problem? The work is refracted through the texts and musical idioms of the African American South and Jewish Eastern Europe, and draws on the writings of DuBois, the renowned writer, American sociologist, and historian, and the British writer Israel Zangwill. The performance will be followed by opportunities for audience questions. Please feel free to send in questions for the Q&A at any time during the talk by visiting slido.com/Stroum. I think you're all aware with this. I'm the only one who isn't. So please help me welcome Anthony Russell.
Thank you so much. So I am going to take a break and have the amazing Dmitri Gaskin set our scene. In 1892, a British Jewish writer named Israel Zangwill published a book titled Children of the Ghetto. In 1903, an African-American writer named W.E.B. DuBois published a book titled The Souls of Black Folk. These are the unchanged words of Zangwill and DuBois in dialogue with each other. The music of Negro religion is that plaintive rhythmic melody, the cadenza of a psalmic phrase, with its touching minor cadences, the minor keys of atonement, which still remains the most original and beautiful expression of human life and longing, strange exotics sprung from the African forest, where its counterpart can still be heard. It was adapted, changed, and intensified by the tragic soul life of the slave, the odor of continental ghettos, until, under the stress of law and whip, over all the songs and stories was a trail of tragedy, under all the heartache of a hunted race. It became the one true expression of a people's sorrow, despair, and hope.
Ein lulu gleninger, ein lulinku, ein lulu scheninger, ein lulinku. When you wake, you shall have all the pretty little horses, paints and grays, dapples and grays, all the pretty little horses. Ein lulu gleninger, ein lulinku. Hush your boy, don't you cry, go to sleep, my little baby. Dein Tate ist in Felder weg, mein Kind. A Vögel wird bringen dir, a Vögel, mein Kind. Ein da lulu gleninger, ein lulinku. Hush your boy, don't you cry, go to sleep, my little baby. down yonder. Way down yonder in the meadow, there's a poor little lammy. Butterflies round his eyes, poor things crying for his mammy. Dein Tate ist in Felder weg, in Walde weg, mein Kind. A Blimmel wird bringen dir, a Blimmel, mein Kind. Heida, Lulu, Gleningen, Heida, Lulinku. Shaddai, don't you cry, go to sleep, my little baby.
Between me and the other world, there is ever an unasked question, unasked by some through feelings of delicacy, by others through the difficulty of rightly framing it. How does it feel to be a problem? At these I smile, or am interested, or reduce the boiling to a simmer, as the occasion might require. To the real question, how does it feel to be a problem? I answer seldom a word. And yet being a problem is a strange experience, peculiar even for one who has never been anything else. The folk who compose our pictures are children of the ghetto. Their faults are bred of its hovering miasma of persecution, their virtues straightened and intensified by the narrowness of its horizon.
Mai kommage malon der Regen, wo gelos der mir zu Herrn. Seine Tropens auf die Schulden grükeln sich wie Triebtränen. I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger, a traveling through this world of woe. But there's no sickness, toil, no danger in that bright land to which I go. Nei, komm, melon mein Leben, wollenlos mir zu werden, vollen Welken in der Jugend, war die Zeit, war ältet werden, essen Denken, schlingen Tränen, schlafen auf dem Bank, dem Harten. I'm just a wayfaring stranger, a traveling through this world of war. But there's no sickness, toil, nor danger in that bright land to which I go. Deuten die Heulen Halse unerfreulich
We seldom study the condition of the Negro today honestly and carefully. It is much easier to assume that we know it all, or perhaps having reached conclusions in our mind, we are loath to have them disturbed by facts. And yet, how little we know of these millions, of their daily lives and longings, of their homely joys and sorrows, of their real shortcomings. The poorest life is to itself the universe and all that is therein. These humble products of a great and terrible past, strange fruits of a motley flowering secular tree whose roots are in Canaan and whose boughs overshadow the earth, all the happier for not knowing that the fullness of life was not theirs.
Be my woman, girl, I'll be your man. Every Sunday dollar in your hand, Lord, in your hand. Every Sunday dollar in your hand. Keep your promise, girl, you made to me. Don't got married till I go free. I go free, Lord, I go free. Won't got married till I go free. Every Sunday dollar in your hand. Won't got married till I go free.
And now, Dmitri Gaskin. was out in the country on a dark Sunday night, dimly across the fields, a rhythmic cadence of song mingled with the impassioned supplications of the worshippers who came hither to batter the gates of heaven, soft, thrilling, powerful, that swelled and rumbled and roared, and the people moaned and fluttered, while roundabout came a wail and groan, chorused prayers with a zeal that shook the window panes, an outcry and a scene of human passion such as I've never conceived of before. They enjoyed themselves in this shul of theirs, to the mad abandon of physical fervor, stamping, shrieking, and shouting, skipped and shook and sang and wailed and moaned, the rushing to and fro and wild waving of arms, the weeping and the laughing. And they were not the least happy when they were crying. The vision and the trance, they clenched their fist and thumped their breasts when the Spirit of the Lord passed by and, seizing the devotee, made him mad with supernatural joy and the hilarious rhapsodies of rejoicing. If the service had been more intelligible, it would have been less emotional and edifying. It varied in expression from the silent, rapt countenance or the low murmur and moan, here a rising and there a bow, now 3 steps backwards, and now a beating of the heart. All this is nothing new in the world, but as old as religion, a heterogeneous blend of historical strata of all periods in which the gems of poetry and pathos and spiritual fervor glittered, and pitiful records of ancient persecutions lay, petrified. These are the characteristics of Negro religious life as developed up to the time of the emancipation. The jubilance of a festival, Omain, and the sobriety of a workaday, Omain.
In the Lord, in the Lord, my soul's been anchored. In the Lord, my Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord, my soul's been anchored. In the Lord, vani tefiloti. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Lecha Adoshem et ratzon Elokim berov chasnecha. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Aneni, Aneni, Beimet Yishecha. I'm gonna pray and never stop. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord, until I reach that mountain top. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord, my Lord, in the Lord, in the Lord. my soul's been anchored in the Lord. In the Lord, in the Lord, my soul's been anchored in the Lord. My soul's been anchored in the Lord. Oh Lord, trouble so hard. Oh Lord, trouble so hard. Yes, indeed, my trouble so hard. Oh Lord, don't nobody know my trouble but God. Otzel mo nishkav, kum lavoy desamboyre. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Odem doigle budomov, venen doigle budomov. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Oy, stein toif. Domov enoi moizerim, yomov enoi choserim. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Auf 3 Sachen weg ich hierlech. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Auf Urben bis mich durch. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Und auf Goles Shechine. Don't nobody know my trouble but God. Oh Lord, oh. Und auf Zores Israel, Israel, Israel. When the train comes along, when the train comes along, Lord, gonna meet you at the station. Ooh, when the train come along. When the train come along, Lord, when the train comes along, Lord, gonna meet you at the station. When the train come along, In Eisenbahnneihe ist die Zeit geworden, welche führt Passagieren, sei arm, sei reich, läusend im Winter, nur als das bisschen Kurven, weil das ist am Muschel an gegen euch. Wir sitzen da in die Waggonen, der Lokomotiv ist in die Zeit, führt mit sich Menschenmillionen und läuft wie mit Keulen und Streit. When the train come along, Lord, when the train come along, Lord, gonna meet you at the station, when the train come along. Jeder Pause Sekunde, jede Stacja ist da, jede Bestatke ist Stunde, jeder Boy has dieser Jahr. Dem Billett, die was die Haus in Tasch, das ist dein Masel, dein Reiseplan. Wie sie fuhren und was für eine Klasse, so ist bestimmt von Gott, der Direktor von Bahn. When the train come along, Lord, when the train come along, Lord, gonna meet you at the station, when the train come along. Bei die Vauxhall klingt mit der Glocke, die Konduktoren springen auf, es laufen Passagieren, jeder mit sein Päckl. Willkommen zu und willkommen up. Und als mein Herz ruckgehen, du Ding sich nicht, du bist nicht sehr kein alter Mann. Deine Billette ist und du weinst im Siehst, also ist bestimmt von Gott, der Direktor von Bahn. When the train comes along, Lord, when the train comes along, Lord, gonna meet you at the station, when the train comes along. When the train comes along, Lord, when the train comes along, Lord, gonna meet you at the station, when the train comes along. I open my mouth unto the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth unto the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth unto the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be. I open my mouth unto the Lord, and I won't turn back. I will go, I shall go, to see what the end is gonna be. I will go, I shall go, 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 I will go, I have to go to see what the end is gonna be. Thank you so much. I don't know what you were expecting, but I guess the idea was a gospel church in Bessarabia, so that's what you got.
I'm actually going to abuse my position as moderator by asking the first question and ignoring the audience. Especially since I actually can't see any questions on here. Thinking of the title of the work, Between Me and the Other World, and for me, the first thing that comes into mind, aside from DuBois's idea about the other world, the world of white people and the judgments they make about black people and their portrayal of them, that double consciousness, is the Yiddish word, Yiddish meaning of other world, which is the Jene Welt, the other side, the land of the dead. And I wondered if that, when you talked about the very last song, I'm going to go see what the end is like, I wondered if that idea of the Yiddish meaning of the other world had any part in your interpretation of DuBois's other world, because Soul of Black Folk is so riven with just this poetry of grief and loss.
Right.
And I mean, it starts off with buried in this book, and the account of his son's death, and it's haunted. And I wondered if that idea of the Yiddish Jene Welt.
It didn't until just now, but now that you've said it, I mean, it's kind of there. I think in this collection of songs in text, there is a quality of whoever these individuals are who I'm sort of portraying being haunted by coming out of a history of persecution and death, and basically trying to persevere in the face of that, but also feeling all of that as well. So I mean, maybe to a certain extent that there is an element of that. I mean, everything that you've just mentioned, I think when I originally came up with this sort of, I borrowed this title, the idea was that the dialectic between black people and the other world was a dialectic in which Jews, I think, at the same time could possibly share. They would be able to read this text and realize that this concept of double consciousness is the case for them as well. So I think that's why I used it, because it felt like it had meaning in two directions, and I wanted to sort of establish that as being the dynamic that we're sort of creating in these pieces. Not only this sort of relationship between black people in the rest of the world and Jewish people in the rest of the world, but even between black people and Jewish people, right? So I wanted to sort of create this space, and it would have been completely impossible without Dmitri and his ability to sort of harmonically and idiomatically bring up these ambiguous, musically ambiguous, but also extremely trenchant and well-colored spaces for me to be able to sing into, like, it's all well and good. I can sit in my bed and imagine, okay, what would a gospel church sound like in Bessarabia? But like, He's the one who
accordion.
a lot of accordion, right? But like, you're the one who actually like puts the bricks together and kind of builds that shul for me to daven in. So, so yeah, I hope that sort of answers your question.
Yeah, it does. We have a bunch of questions here. One is for Dmitri. Can Dmitri tell us about the pieces he played? What's their origin and titles?
I would be happy to. At the beginning, I played a little improvisation, and then I played mazurka, a folk tune from Poland. I learned it from my teacher. He learned it from his teacher. That's all we know. His teacher was this like, I don't even know how to describe him, but very old guy who was like just lived in some random Polish countryside village, total misfit, but was like a genius at playing the violin. That got passed down to that guy and then to me. The second piece I played, I'm very interested in Polish folk music and its overlaps or not overlaps with Jewish folk music, and I think that piece actually, the way I played it, sort of ambiguous whether, which style it was really from, which was on purpose. The second piece I played was, I believe it's a Russian share by, recorded and performed by an American orchestra called Harry Candel's Orchestra in New York, and probably in the 20s. Very beautiful recording. And yeah, also kind of put my own, that would have been like a piece for dancing. Obviously, we're not dancing here, so I tried to sort of...
I just want you to know, in my original conception of this space, there would actually be a wider circle where people could just kind of like, do...
Well, given that we didn't have that, I play it different, so it sounds, it's sitting down music.
We sit down, so eventually we can dance, right? You can have one without the other.
There we go.
No, but does sitting lead to dancing?
I hope so.
Somebody's going to get bored of sitting for long enough.
We have a question here. Your performance plays heavily with the common use of minor keys in gospel and klezmer.
Totally.
What other similarities do you find between gospel and klezmer?
Well, I think one of the... That would probably be a better question for you to answer because, you could probably really get into the guts. There is a number of melodies that are written on the pentatonic scale in both Eastern European Jewish folk and klezmer music and in African diasporic music. So what this does is create melodies that, for me, seem to almost melt into each other. The phrases, in a way, resemble each other. I'm just a poor wayfaring stranger. Like the melody, the sort of, the melodies have the same sort of structure because they all come out of this shared scale. And this is something I think that we take advantage of in order to create what I called, I think, on Tuesday, like this diasporic space. I like this idea of, this is a strange word to use, but fugitive melodies. Melodies that people can pack up and put in their pockets when they have to run. And when they have a moment, they unfold it, and it expresses all of what they were feeling before and during and after that experience. And what I felt like I experienced the first time I really got a sense of kind of Eastern European Jewish music and melody making was this element of the fugitive melody. And I knew that, like, in my heart from my own experiences of African American melody, which had this, I think, this fugitive quality. They're simple melodies, but when they're sung with kavanah, when they're sung with intention, they suddenly unfold, and it feels like you're looking at the entire history of the world.
I'm going to contribute to that and give a very different answer, which is...
Please do.
I think there are not a lot of similarities.
Right.
And the fact that it seems like it after this show that's an illusion that we've created.
Like I said, we're creating a space for us to explore this
Maybe
idea.
illusion is too cynical of a word, but I would just say, that's a product of very, very careful, combing over tens or hundreds of melodies to find the ones that actually do work together. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, this project has evolved over time, and and you can hear, and I'll just point out, some of the earlier sort of fusions between these two, actually, like the Poor Wayfaring Stranger and Michael Mash Malone, that's like, two texts put directly in opposition with each other. Some of the later sort of songs from this project are more subtle, right? Like the very last one we performed, where it's not a gospel tune in dialogue with another tune, it's with another style. So it's just that song, but cast into a more klezmery style in a way that sort of works.
Right.
And so that's sort of, in some sense, I don't want to say more interesting, but kind of more subtle form where we were able to just shoehorn one into the other without making it like too in your face.
I mean, when the text that you sent me for the Zangwill and the DuBois, you actually can't tell the difference. There's some things I go, oh, well, that's DuBois.
There's a part of me that would love to do like a test and read one of these texts, and for people to tell me, okay, like, I don't know. Which line is Zangwill and which line is DuBois, because they really run into each other. And I think when I was talking about there being these interesting parallels between early Jewish cinema and early black cinema, the way in which the camera sort of panned across faces, and was really interested in a number of faces because, in a sense, these were not just films about Jewish characters, but they were films about Jewishness. And these are not films about black characters, but they were films about blackness. In that same way, there's just this quality where these texts, because I think they were written in the very same time and they were written in a similar sort of rhetorical voice, they seem to sing into each other. Yeah. I mean, what's funny is that I'm willing to bet in that one long text that I read about basically Jews in shul and black people in church, I'm willing to bet most people would think a lot of the lines that were about church were actually the ones that were about shul. The ones about, people wailing and moaning and throwing themselves, that's Zangwill.
Yeah.
Being filled with rapture when the Spirit, goes by, that's DuBois. But I feel like while we've done a lot of work to musically create this space that we perform in, it also, and this makes me sound like a crazy Kabbalist, I'm going to apologize, it exists in the world. It's there. It's like, boy, I'm really I've come to the right place. It's like Lurianic fragments, right? Something that was created at the beginning of the world and then was smashed, and there's like little pieces of it everywhere. And and I like to think to some degree that like this is our opportunity to sort of kind of bring these things together that kind of exist in the world. I mean, I think a part of the title of this was a Tikkun, a Tikkun. So the idea is that it's sort of a repair between two things that have previously been broken.
Well, isn't the other meaning of Tikkun is like a song? It's a rabbinical song, and I like the idea that DuBois is part of the rabbinical song, and so is Zangwill.
He has a complicated history with Jews, and what's interesting is it changes over time, which gives, it's weird, it happened in the past, but it gives me hope. He had basically anti-Semitic passages in his book, and as he got to know more Jewish people and basically rethought what he was thinking, it was changed in later editions. And he even writes about changing it and what caused him to change it. And it's fascinating to me to see that.
Well, it's interesting too because he talks about people from Africa, kidnapped Africans, as savages, as wild men, and you sit there and think, okay, that whole double consciousness
right,
thing
like
that
how
he
does
names,
this,
he's also suffering from it.
Well, I mean, here's the interesting thing, is that he's writing this, I think, having just come back from Europe. He's thoroughly like a turn of the century, up to date, modern man. So, I mean, in some ways that yields what you're talking about, but it also yields some of the most beautiful writing about blackness that has ever existed. And it's kind of there's this weird tension there.
Well, he's just a poet as well. I mean, just
Right.
astonishingly beautiful writing.
He's also an amazing graphic artist, by the way. When you go home, you should look up. He made a number of graphs in order to represent information that he had gotten concerning research about the black population in the United States. And they are all extremely crazy graphs that are very, they're very innovative. They look like modern art. I'm surprised they haven't actually been shown in the Modern Art Museum. Look them up. You'll be surprised.
I'm just happy to claim him as a professor.
Okay.
So, okay. I'll stop hijacking the conversation. Let's see. We have Tuesday. You talked about black spirituals marked by attendant Messiah, distinguished from Yiddish tradition.
Yes.
How is that difference evident in the musicality lyric?
How is that difference?
Yeah. How is that difference evident in the musicality?
That's a good question. I mean, it's interesting. I do a workshop occasionally in Jewish spaces where we talk about kind of the relationship between African American music and synagogue music. And I get people comfortable enough to say the most essentialist things that they could possibly say about each kind of music. What invariably happens is that black music is happy and Jewish music is sad. Except when black music is sad and Jewish music is happy. So it's it never seems to make any sense. I do think that the quality of optimism that exists in optimism and hope that exists in black folk music comes from having messianism as a part of one's belief. And on the flip side, I think a lot of almost world weariness and cynicism in Jewish music also comes from having messianism kind of floating around. It's kind of okay, you're going to come anytime now. Okay, we're being massacred. Okay, if anytime we've been waiting. It's more about the waiting, right? Than it is about the fact that it's actually going to happen. So I feel like there are elements of that, and I'm always sort of trying to play off of what those are. Yeah.
The whole soul shine come in the gola.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's about time. Yeah.
It's about time. Exactly.
I've been asked to repeat the link, slido.com, for slido.com / Stroum. Yeah, Stroum. Okay. A short question for Dmitri. What accordions do you own?
I don't think 3 is actually the real number. It just sounds good in a bio.
Are you a hoarder? Are you hoarding accordions?
This is really the main one that I play. I have also there's a style of accordion that was made in Poland pre-World War II that it's kind of an interesting historical oddity because Poland is I'll speak a little bit critically as a Polish person. They're always between two world powers, right? Between Germany and Russia, and kind of don't have too much of their own personality, or rather they try and forge that personality for themselves, and inevitably it's formed of these other personalities around them. And so this style of accordion is basically the Russian style of accordion is this button accordion that has 3 to 5 rows of buttons on it. And has a totally different, fingering system than the piano accordion, which is sort of the more Western style. This Polish accordion works the same way as a button accordion, but it looks like a piano accordion. It has black keys and white keys, and then another row of white keys. So that's 3, right? And so it's I like to think of it cynically as like, the Polish people are really pretty Eastern, but they want to look Western.
Yep.
Maybe next show I'll bring that one out.
I just want to say, though, it's really important, like, what you're able to bring as far as, like, the research and training that you get when you do go to Poland, because I think when I took that trip to Belarus and Poland with Yiddishkeit, we didn't only learn the history of Jewish Eastern Europe, but we learned about the history of all of its co-territorial peoples. And I think when you don't have access to that, you're only getting half of a story. And what's interesting, especially in the music that Dmitri brings to this performance, is, I think as you said before, figuring out kind of where the points of overlap between Jewish music and Eastern European folk music. In the same way that I think when I was doing research in this project, figuring out what are the overlaps between diasporic black music, Scottish music, Irish music, English music, Native American music. I mean, it turns out that, if you went into a delivery room and you said, I have this baby, the baby's name is Poor Wayfaring Stranger, like, half of the room would be like, oh, that's ours, right? Because, like, the roots of this song are contested. There are, like, white people who are like, this is our song. There are black people who are like, this is our song. The spaces in which this music was created were intensely multicultural spaces where music was constantly traveling back and forth. I mean, there are parts of Appalachia that were called Afralachia because there were so many black people there. And people often forget when, this goes back to like a complaint I had earlier, when people talk about, when people think about Americana, they forget that like black people were there creating like a lot of the roots of what Americana is, country music, like all of those things. Like, it doesn't make sense to think of music or to think of culture as being this thing that is shut off from everything else. And I think it's the same for Eastern Europe as it is for the United States. There are all of these cultural streams that are kind of moving in and out of each other.
Yeah, I was thinking of what Antonin Dvorak, who said, he said, the American music, the genius of American music is black music, gospel music, and Native American music.
He got it.
Yeah,
I mean,
he immediately got it.
I mean, it's so interesting. There's a theme in his New World Symphony. Da da dun dun da 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 dun da dun 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 da da. That, like, to me, like every time I hear that, like I'm in a concert hall and I hear that, I'm like, it's syncopated. Like, that's black music.
Yeah.
Like, that's in the middle of this giant, I mean, with Dvorak, you never really know if the forest is in is in Bohemia or whether it's in Birmingham. Like, it's like, which one is it? But once again, it's like a space that I enjoy because, like, I feel like I can take all of this in and know that these streams are constantly moving in and out of each other. Yeah.
Let's see. Tell us about your sweater.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Everybody likes it.
Dmitri, we're gonna have to start like carrying like the Tzvi Breeder collection here. Oh goodness, this is a funny story. Okay.
Can I say a word on that before
Please
you tell
say
your
a word
story?
on that. Yeah.
If folks are interested in buying the Convergence CD,
Please.
Cosmopolitan CD, or Cosmopolitan Storybook, we do have a couple copies of those. Find us after the show.
So yes, basically what we performed today started out as an EP that I recorded with Varetsky Pass, an amazing Bay Area klezmer trio that plays music that is basically from the Carpathians. The first time I heard them, I went insane. I was like, oh my God, it's the most beautiful music I've ever heard in my life, and the way that it's played is amazing. I recorded the first version of this project with them, and you can hear that on the EP, which is out there, titled Convergence. It's easy to find. It has my head on the front of it. I asked the illustrator, like, create something for this album, and that's what he did, and I'm like, okay. And then, coming back from Belarus and Poland, I think you mentioned earlier, like I was immensely inspired and by all of these like modernist Yiddish poets who had this amazing poetry. And we were in the places basically where they lived and where they worked and where they wrote. We were in Grodno, on Leib Nidus Street. We were like looking at like the apartment where he lived and where he published his first works. Leib Nidus is this amazing Yiddish writer. Celia Dropkin, who is this amazing writer as well. We were in her, we were basically in the town where she came from, Bobroisk. We were in front of her high school, and then we started reading some of her poetry. It's very sexy poetry, so I felt a little uncomfortable reading it in front of a high school, but you know, that's what we were doing. So I came home, and I was just looking at the voice note the other day in order to figure out like what the date was. Like about within a week of coming back from Belarus and Poland, I started setting like the very first poem that really caught my attention by Celia Dropkin, Die Zirkusdame, which was facilitated for me by Faith's wonderful translation. There's a book called The Acrobat, which is a collection of Dropkin's poems that have been translated. So that was like our first, when we first started writing songs together, original songs, that was like our text. That was our Teure. So we just last year finally recorded all of these songs that we've been writing, these wonderful collection of modernist Yiddish poets in an album called Cosmopolitan, and that's performed with Dmitri's wonderful klezmer trio called Baymele. It's spelled B-A-Y-M-E-L-E because it's in the Bay Area. Puns, we got them. So yeah, it's interesting doing this project, but also knowing that that kind of exists as well.
I took you very off the rails about the sweater.
Oh my God, okay, the sweater, okay. I forget like how I found out about it, but there's this very unusual website which will pretty much put anything on the front of a sweatshirt. And when I say anything, I mean anything. If you wanted a sweatshirt that had Mickey Mouse smoking a joint, you could get it from this website. Now, that is not the one that I purchased, obviously, because where would I wear that? But they also had a collection of fine art images. So the sweater that I had on the other day that had the unicorn tapestry from the Met was there. I became mildly viral on Twitter when I tweeted a picture of a sweater that had Artemisia Gentileschi's image of Judith cutting off the head of Harlophanes on a sweater. So if you ever want to see a beheading on a sweater in fine art, you can buy that and you can wear it, and your friends will ask you, why are you wearing a sweater with someone getting their head chopped off? And it's like, well, they won't ask you that. They'll be like, where can I get one? So that's where the sweater's from. Oh, goodness.
Get your phone out.
I don't remember the name of it. I have it I have it bookmarked, but I don't remember the name of it.
You said it was in Poland?
It was in Poland, though.
Poland, okay.
Yeah. And you've offered sometimes to go over there and save me shipping, but we never figured it out. So.
I think we have a few minutes for one more question, and I'm not sure if I can pronounce this. Can you speak about the krechts, the sob, the catch in the voice in the musical tradition?
Actually, I think we both can because it's in both. It's in vocal music and.
You start because it comes from the voice.
Okay, so yeah, it's this ornament, and it can be light. And it can be kind of heavy. Sometimes I do it a little bit on the heavy side because I'm also interpreting it in a way that is conducive to black musical expression, which also uses this kind of break, this kind of crack in the voice as an expressive element. I'm trying to see, let's see. Oi, weh, Mama, ich liebe schön Jingo, schön ist wie die ganze Welt. Okay, there's no corrects in that one. I'm so sorry. Let me think.
Let's give like a niggin. That you would
Yeah. Or it can mean or if I'm really like, these are like, low, medium, and high. It's expressive. It's an ornament that you use to kind of identify a phrase that either I think you're transmitting to the audience your feelings about something that's happening in a text, or you're actually expressing your own private feelings about something in a text. So it's a quality. It's an ornament from Yiddish singing, Yiddish folk singing, and it made its way into instrumental music as well. So.
on the accordion. So I would say it's, when it comes to instrumental styles like of Yiddish and klezmer music, it is probably the defining ornament of the style, and it sounds something like this.
You can just go back and forth, just correcting.
We do it everywhere, and we love it.
I think it's actually past 8:30. I think we have to say goodbye.
The both of us would really like to thank you for inviting us here to sort of first kind of defend dissertation-wise what we were doing on Tuesday, and then to actually do it on Thursday, and then have me back home in time for Shabbos. So I just want to say thank you and how grateful I am that something like this exists and that we've been invited here to do this. Thank you so much.